Why do young men need you?
Well, first of all, it's not, I would say it's not just young men. Part of that's an artifact of the fact that most of the people who watch YouTube are young men. But I won't evade the question. I mean, because, see, to some degree, maturation among men is a voluntary process. It's not so voluntary for women. They have to grow up fast. They have a lot of things to do before they hit 30.
Yeah.
With men, it can take longer, and they need a call to adventure, let's say, and they need a call to responsibility, and they need to be initiated into responsibility and to have a case made for its utility. And so I'm saying, look, it's better to be adult than to be a child. It's better. It's better to be in control of your own destiny. There's a place for you in the world. The world would be lesser if you don't take your place in it. That you have a responsibility to bear, to sort out your education, to straighten out your life, and to become who you are.
Grow the hell up.
Grow up, and for reasons that are positive for you, positive for your family, positive for everyone.
But is this generation lost? They're clinging to what you're saying and doing in a desperate. I'm not criticising what you're saying and doing, but they need it. They need it desperately. Why? Why are they lost?
Well, I think that every generation needs a message that supports maturation and responsibility. I think that we've done a bad job as a culture of putting that message forward. So to me, since the mid-1960s, our young people have been fed a never-ending diet of rights and impulsive freedoms, something like that. And that leaves a hole, because most of the meaning that people manage in their lives, and so that would be the meaning that you can offset against the tragedy of life, that comes from adopting responsibility and carrying a load. Like, human beings, in some sense, are designed for a load, and the heavier the load, the better. It's one of the things that gives you, there's this proclivity among psychologists to attempt to facilitate self-esteem, which is a word I don't care much for. I think that self-respect is a much better term, and I think you develop self-respect by carrying a responsibility.
I feel very lucky to have been born in this country. I think it's essentially a decent country. It does follow a lot of what happens in the United States, and I'll get to that in a moment. But I was talking to some welfare workers, police, Salvation Army yesterday, saying to me they think society is becoming, and particularly at the age group we're talking, is becoming more aggressive, more cynical, more angry. Do you agree with that? And if so, why?
Well, I don't think the statistics bear that out, because what we've seen overall over especially the last 20 years, is a remarkable decline in violent crime. I do think that there might be an epidemic more of aimlessness and depression and anxiety, that sort of thing. And I think that that's partly because the case for growing up is not made well. And because we're also so cynical about our own societies. I was in Amsterdam a month ago talking to a group of well-placed intellectuals. They're all friends of Theo van Gogh, who was killed in Amsterdam about 15 years ago, was stabbed. And they said that embarrassment about the Dutch culture is rampant in their society. And that just makes my jaw drop, because I go to Holland and I think, my God, this is such an amazing place. These people, they scraped this country out of the bottom of the ocean. They built dikes to hold back the waves. It's free, it's liberal, it's compassionate, it's orderly, it's beautiful.
Yet they're embarrassed by it.
They're embarrassed by it because of its tyrannical, patriarchal nature. It's like, well, who are you comparing it to? It's like, what are we comparing our societies to? Where do you want to live on the planet or in time? Anywhere but in the West? Not if you have any sense.
You've sort of been described as a warrior against political correctness. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Tell me about this then. Our national carrier, Qantas, got some attention earlier this week, and I was thinking about this, so I knew you were coming in. And they were taking advice from a diversity group that's publicly funded.
Yeah, that's a bad idea. Yeah, that's a bad idea.
They wanted to ban words like guys and chairman, husband and wife, replace words like mankind and chairman. What's your reaction to that?
I think that it would be better if people tried to solve some real problems instead of playing these idiot diversity games. I think that everyone who plays identity politics, whether they play it on the right or the left, is going to pay for it in ways they can hardly imagine. It's a very counterproductive way of dividing up the world. it's impossible to come to a peaceful solution in the identity politics universe. Even the identity politics types themselves, they've run into this problem they call intersectionality, right? So, okay, so you classify people by race and by sex, let's say. So, and seek for equity along those dimensions. But then, well, what about the intersection between those dimensions? So you have enough ethnic minorities in your organization, let's say. You match by population, which is a foolish way of doing it, but you do that. And maybe you're matched by sex. But then, well, what about the intersection between race and sex? Well, and then what about the intersection between race, sex, ethnicity? Then you could add social class to that. Then you could add social proclivity. Then you could add attractiveness. There's a never-ending way of dividing people up into groups, and you can't equalize across all those ways. It's just technically not possible.
Do you think people need to make a stand on issues like this? And when an airline like Qantas makes these decisions, do they need to stand against it? Do they need to boycott it? Do they need to do that sort of thing?
I think they need to understand it at a deeper level. It's like we have to decide if we're going to divide people up, if we think that dividing people up primarily by their group identity is a good idea. And it's not. It's a bad idea. It will lead to an enhancement of our tribal proclivities. And I don't think that if you're an advocate of peace, that you would push and advocate for our further division into tribal entities. It's not wise.
Is this transient? Will we move through this?
We'll see.